Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Jodie Edwards. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the ceremony broadcast across Australia. We also welcome the officer cadets and midshipmen from the Australian Defence Force Academy. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Martin McNamarra. Martin McNamarra was born in Sydney in the early 1880s to John and Frances McNamarra. Little is known about Martin's early life. As a young man, he was working as a labourer in Canberra when he met Mary Doonan. The couple married and had 4 surviving children: Doris, John, Francis and Robert. In about 1910, the family moved to Dulwich Hill in Sydney's inner western suburbs, where Martin continued to work as a labourer. In March 1916, McNamarra went to Sydney Showground at Moore Park to volunteer for service in the Australian Imperial Force. He undertook initial training in Australia before leaving Sydney on the transport ship Anchises in August. Arriving in England in October, he undertook further training there and joined his unit, the 36th Australian Infantry Battalion. In November, the battalion travelled to France to join the fighting on the Western Front. Arriving at positions in northern France, the men trained and spent time in frontline trenches during the coldest winter in local memory. Even in late March, the battalion's war diary noted tersely, "Snow falling, cold intense." In the first week after arriving in France, the 36th Battalion had been bombed by German aircraft and had also undertaken training in the use of gas masks. Such was their introduction to the nature of modern warfare. In summer 1917, British commanders turned their attention north towards the Franco-Belgian border. The 36th Battalion had its first experience of battle in early June, when it was in reserve during the British capture of the town of Messines. During the march through Plugsturt Wood to the front line, the men came under a heavy enemy artillery barrage of gas shells. The bombardment slowed the men's progress, but they struggled through wearing gas masks, and most made it to their appointed positions on time. On the evening of the 10th of June 1917, the battalion was ordered to raid a system of German trenches known as Pottery Farm. The raid began at 11 p.m, but while the Australians were forming up to attack, the Germans began shelling the Australian trenches. McNamarra was standing in a frontline trench when a shell exploded close to him and he was killed instantly. His company commander, Captain Francis Piggott, and a message runner in the battalion, Private Percy Simon, were also killed in the blast. Martin McNamarra was about 30 years old. He was buried in Toronto Avenue Cemetery, a small cemetery in Belgium that contains the graves of 78 Australians who were killed during the First World War. McNamarra was survived in Australia by his widow Mary and their 4 children, Doris, John, Francis and Robert. Private Martin McNamarra is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Martin McNamarra, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left behind grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them. lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrubber Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We'd like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial. Wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.